Hey Jake, it's Caitlin again. I hope you're finding these videos helpful for your summer packet. I apologize if I'm speaking a little quietly. My family's trying to sleep and I'm a night owl, so I'm going to work on these for you. Okay, so on the last one, I only did the first part of number two, page two, or I'm sorry, page three, right? So today we're going to talk about the fractions, decimals, and percent table. Now, converting between decimals and fractions, super important tip, or super important skill that you need to have. So we're going to talk about this. Now, I emailed your mom, or I will actually after I'm done recording this, a couple of documents. The first being that this is my place value chart, the other thing that I'm going to email her is my multiplication table up to 20. I think that's really helpful. But for today, this place value chart is helpful for when we're talking about this side of it, the decimals, okay? So let's take a look at this packet here. The first things first, we have fraction that is labeled as 1/4, and we need to make that into a decimal and percent. I'm gonna back up and say, okay, so if you can get something over 100, let's talk about this. 17 over 100 equals 0.17, which equals 17%, okay? Now, a couple things here. One, if it's over 100, you just gotta put it into a decimal form. Super easy, right? Once it's in decimal form like this, I could never remember how to convert it into a percent, but do you see how a percent has 2 dots in it? That percent sign has 2 dots. That means you're just gonna use, you're gonna take this guy over here, or take this decimal over here, that makes more sense. Take this decimal over here, you're gonna go 1, 2, and you're gonna get 17%, okay? So let's talk about this. If you have 28 over 100, that's gonna equal 0.28, and we move our decimal spot 1, 2 spots from our to make our percent, from our decimal to our percent, and that's 28%. So 13 over 100 is going to be 0.13, which equals 13%. Basically, everything over 100 is going to make your life a lot easier. The only trick is when it comes to here. 3 over 100 and 30 over 100. Okay, so 30 over 100 as a decimal is going to be 0.3. It's 0.30 just like the rest of them, but we don't use that extra 0. You can put it there if you want to, but more advanced math students wouldn't put that there. So 0.3. However, if you remember, there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so you need to move this guy over 1, 2 spots. It's going to be 30%. So what does that have to do with 3 over 100? 3 over 100. That means that this guy is actually going to look like this. So when you get a single digit over 100, you got to pay extra careful attention, okay? But again, we're going to move that because the percent sign has 2 dots in it. We're going to move 1, 2, and we're going to get 3%, okay? So if it has a single digit, you got to be real careful, all right? All right, with that said, there are things that'll make our lives easier, and that is finding a fraction that is a factor of 100. So let's, off to the side here, I'm gonna do all of our factors of 100. I like to do things in order by starting with the easiest. After 1 comes 2, and 2 times 50 will give us 100. I should put that up here. 100 is what we're going for. Now 3 does not go into 100, but 4 does. 4 times 25. After 4 comes 5, 5 times 20. 6 does not go into 100, 7, 8, 9, 10 is our last one. That looks really crooked on my screen. I have no idea. Okay, so it looks crooked on the screen, but not on here. I don't know. Okay, so what we're gonna do is take some of these fractions that do not end in 100, because at this point, if anything is a fraction that ends in 100 that has that in the denominator, you'll be able to put it into a decimal form and then a percent. So what we're gonna do is that very first one as a fraction, decimal, percent. This is I'm doing a little makeshift table here. All right, so the fraction, decimal, and percent. We got 1/4 as a fraction. What makes this easy is if we take 1/4, we're gonna make a proportion. And a proportion is just comparing 2 ratios. Ratios are just fractions. So this is a fraction, but it's also a ratio, right? So like I said, a proportion is 2 ratios comparing to each other. So ratios become important, not in just this, but all of math. So pay real close attention here, okay? We want to put something over 100, because if we got it over 100, it's a lot easier to put a decimal into a percent. What do I need to multiply 4 by to get 100? Look over on our cheat sheet over here, it's 25, right? So I'm gonna multiply that by 25. If I do it on the bottom, I have to do it on the top. So 1/4 written as a fraction over 100 is 25 over 100. And as soon as something's in 100, you're able to do it. 0.25, which equals 25%. So we've done that first one. That's it. That's all there is to it. As a decimal, it's 0.25, and it's 25%. Now I will tell you, there are some fractions that you just want to know off the top of your head. This is one of them, because if you think of quarters, right? One quarter out of 4 is 25 cents. And that's, once you have it in decimal form, it's pretty easy to put it into percent form. If you have 3 quarters out of 4 that make $1, part over whole, that's going to be 0.75 cents, because if you have 3 quarters, that's 75 cents. That would be 75%. So memorize your fourths. That's a really good one to do. The other thing that I want you to memorize are your tens. Your tens are pretty easy. So this is not on your paper, but let's talk about this. 1 over 10 is going to be 0.1. 2 over 10 is going to be 0.2. 3 over 10, 0.3. 4 over 10, 0.4. So you're catching on to this, right? Here's the deal. Why I want you to memorize those is because 1 over 10 is 0.1. 1 over 9, I'm going to break this up here. 1 over 9 is actually 0.1, just like 1 over 10, but with a line over it. It goes on forever and ever and ever. 2 over 9, 2 over 10 is 0.2. I just spit, I get really excited about math. 2 over 10 is 0.2, 2 over 9 is 0.2 with a line over it. 3 over 9 is, 3 over 10 is 0.3, 3 over 9 is 0.3 with a line over it. So those are some good ones to know. So now you know your nines, you know your tens, your nines. The other one I want you to know is 1/2. That's a really common one. 1/2, that's just gonna be 0.5. You need to know that one off the top of your head, okay? 0.5 is 50%. There are 2 dots and a percent sign, so you got to move that decimal 2 spots over, okay? Okay, so I want you to know your nines, your tens, your halves. The other one that I want you to memorize is 1/3 equals 0.3 with a line over it. Just know that. 2/3, 0.6 with a line over it. Just know those ones. Those are going to be helpful. All right, so let's take a look back at your homework, this chart. The next one, we have a percent of 45. All right, 45%, it has this guy has 2 dots in it, so we're going to decimal form, which means, again, in math, we're super lazy, and there's a lot of things that we don't like to write. One of those is decimals. If there is no decimal in a number, it is at the end. And I can't remember, I've been making a ton of videos, so I apologize if I repeat myself here. I can't remember if I told you that already, but there is a decimal at the end here. So our decimal from our percent, there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so we're going to move it over 2 spots. It's going to be 0.45. Okay, 0.45. Now the fraction is going to be 45 over 100. However, you must always reduce your fraction. The good news is reducing fractions by 2 is pretty easy. It's if it ends in a 0 or it ends in a 2. If reducing by 3, we just add up all those digits, and if 3 goes into that number, 3 will go to the number that we added up. For 5, if it ends in a 0 and a 5, we can divide these. So I'm going to do some side work here. We're going to do 45 over 100. This ends in a 5 and a 0, so we can divide both these by 5. We know that 45 divided by 5 is going to be 9, and 100 divided by 5, remember, it's going to be 20. So really the fraction for this guy is 9/20. So you got to really be careful about that and make sure you're reducing your fractions. Okay? So let's take a look at the next guy here. Get this all cleaned up. Your next one is 3 over 10, and I told you to memorize this guy, right? 0.3. Now, there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so you have to move this over 2 spots. So it's not 3%, it's 30%. Be real careful on that. That is super tricky. Super duper tricky. Another way of looking at this is 3 over 10. Let's put that over 100. 10, I need to multiply by 10 to get 100. If I do that on the bottom, I have to do it on the top. So I got 3 times 10, which gives us 30. 30 over 100 is 0.30, but we drop that extra 0, right? Mathematicians, we're lazy, drop that 0 on the end, and that's what gives us that 0.3. So 2 different ways of doing that. Okay, so we've got let's see about this. We have 0.4. Decimal is 0.4. So when things are in decimal form, this is why I wanted you to see this lovely chart. Lovely chart. We're going to be dealing with the decimal side of this. So working over here, if I put 0.4 onto my chart, it's going to look like this, right? 4/10. The key, oh, I was probably pointing to hundreds. 4/10. The key here is tenths. That means it's going to be 4/10 for your fraction. All you have to do is say this out loud when you have a decimal, and that's what you do. So for example, if you have 23, that is 23 hundredths. 23 hundredths, okay? 23 hundredths. Let's say we have 231 thousandths. 231 thousandths, you go 231 over 1,000. So catching on to that? All right, so we know that this is going to be, the fraction is going to be 4/10. But again, you are now getting into advanced math, which means you cannot submit a fraction unless it's the most reduced form. Side work, 4/10, those are both even numbers. So we're going to divide this by 2 and divide this by 2. Even numbers are divisible by 2. We get 2, it's basically cutting it in half, right? So 4 cut in half is 2, 10 cut in half is 5. So the fraction is not 4/10. It is 2/5. 2/5. All right, so going from decimal to percent, there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so we need to go 40%. 40%. And that's really important because percents can have decimals and fractions in them. So it's really important you remember on the difference between decimals and percents. All right, so our next guy is gonna be, let's see, my boxes are getting more and more wonky. 80%. 80%. Well, we know percent sign has 2 dots in it, so we're gonna move our decimal, and again, if it's not shown, it's at the end. We're gonna move our decimal 2 spots, we get 0.8. 0.8. If we put that on my little chart here, that's 0.8 looks like 8/10. So we're gonna do 8/10. Again, those are both even numbers, so make sure you divide those, cut them in half basically. So we get 4/5. 4/5. Good. Last one is 0.5. That's the one I told you to memorize. 0.5 as a decimal. 0.5 as a decimal. Again, there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so we move it over 2 spots, we get 50%. 50% is really just 1/2 of something, okay? 1/2 of something. Excellent work. So that's fractions, decimals, and percents. Now, sometimes I'm gonna rewrite this: fractions, decimals, and percents, okay? Fractions, decimals, and percents. I need to pause this really quick and I'll be right back. I want to give you some more challenging ones so that you can watch those, okay? So bear with me. All right, so I realize these are not on your summer packet, and that's this lovely guy right here. That's okay. I want you to actually take some notes on this, okay? We're gonna talk about some of these that are a little bit more difficult. For example, if I have 503%. Now remember that decimal is at the end of this number right here, right? And we know that there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so we need to move it 2 spots over. 5.03. So I want to talk to you today about like percents that are greater than 100 and less than 1. So we would get 5.03. How do I write that as a fraction? Well, we take that decimal and we're going to write it back onto our magic sheet here. And it was 5.03. So we're going to do 5.03. So really that's 5 3/100ths. 5 3/100ths. That's how you would write that as a fraction. 5 3/100ths. Okay? So let's talk about some of these other guys. What if we have 0.04? 0.04%. This is what I was saying, is you can have some decimals and fractions in your percent. That's okay. What we want to remember is 2 dots and a percent sign means and this time the decimal is shown, whereas usually it's in the back. We still need to move it over 2 spots. So it's going to be 0.0004 as our decimal. We come right back over to this guy and we do 0.0004, and that is 4/10,000ths. and you can see this once I send it to your mom. There's a 10,000 right here. So it's going to be 4 over 10,000. 4 over 10,000. But that's our fraction form, right? 4 over 10,000. Again, we got to reduce. And those are both even numbers. So let's cut them in half. That's going to be 2, and half of 10,000 is 5,000. Those are both even numbers. So let's cut them in half again. Cut this in half, we get 1. Cut this in half, we get 2,500. So 2,500. Okay, so that's dealing with a percent that's smaller than 1. That's a really tiny percent, right? Some of the other ones, let's do point. If you get a decimal that says 0.123, just like the last one, put that in your nifty chart here, okay? And you do 1, 2, 3. So 0.123, it's 123 thousandths. 123 thousandths. That's 123 over 1,000. And I'm going to tell you right now, you can't reduce that. So you're in luck. Okay, so that would be 123 over 1,000. For our percent, remember there are 2 dots and a percent sign, so we're going to go and we get 12.3%. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. But it's really key that you can switch between fractions, decimals, and percents, especially when you get into some percent problems, which are my favorite, and I cannot wait to teach you those. Hopefully that makes sense. That's it for this page that we're working on here, right? So that's the end of page 3. I will see you on page 4. Great work. Thank you so much.